John Unruh, and today I'm going to talk about some of the things that tie together a Rails application between the views, the forms, the controllers, the models, and actually what's in the browser. So to do that, I created a new Rails application, Example Magic, and it's seen here in the RubyMine Integrated Development Environment. I chose to use RubyMine because it has a good breakpoint capability, and I wanted to show you actually what some of the variables contained once I submit the form. Okay, so I created the application with Rails New. I created the model that we're using and this associated views and controllers using Rails G scaffold. And I have a number, a string, and a Boolean in my model, and I have the automatically added, created at, and updated at from Rails. I then ran the migration so that we could work with this. So when the initial view, the new view, is rendered, we start off with the application.html.erb template, which is common to all the views in the application. So in this template, we set up basically the head of the page, and the body is set by the specific view we're looking at. Here we have the style sheet link tag, and that brings in all the CSS for the particular page. And we have the JavaScript include tag, which brings in the JavaScripts. There's also the CSRF meta tags, which is used to prevent cross-site request forgery. There's a token that's generated and then it's checked to make sure that the request is actually from the same site that you are. Then this yields a block, which would be the actual page view, or actual, view for the action. In this case, it's going to be the new action. So we're going to render a partial, which is called form, and we're going to provide a link to the previous page so you can always go back. Now, that partial is right here. It starts off with form 4 and then a model. In this case, the model is example magic because it's an example of the Rails magic. And we're going to then go through and display whatever messages are in the hash, and they're going to look a little bit different if they're error messages or non-error messages. Then we have the actual fields, and these correspond exactly to what's in the schema.rb. So you have the name of the field and its type. And these three views are rendered into HTML when you make the request. So now I'm going to go over to the browser, and you'll see what it looks like. And then I'm going to just reload it so we can see what actually happened. So going back into RubyMine, I'm looking at the development log, and you see it sent a GET request when I reloaded for the new action. And you can see that the new action is actually being executed, and you can see that it's rendering the form partial and rendering the new.html.erb within the layout application.html.erb. And that took 51 milliseconds. And now the browser will, once it gets the page, it will now start requesting the CSS and the JavaScript. And that's all sent down. And that's the end of the rendering of the page from the server's point of view. So once that's all set, we can go over here and take a look at the page, and particularly take a look at the source, because you can see the various things in the header. You see these link tags, which are generated by style sheet link tag, and the script tags, which were generated by JavaScript include tag. You can also see the authenticity token, CSRF param, and then the token, which is the CSRF meta tags. So now we get down into the generation of the page itself. You see the H1 that was in the new action view. You see the form tag, which is generated by form 4. And as we keep going down here, you can see that the method is post, so this will be a post request. And it's sending up the authenticity token also, which is hidden. And then we have our fields. The name value in the field is really important because that's the model name. Then in square brackets it's the attribute name. And you can see how the model name was taken out of Form 4 and the attribute name was taken out of the actual form tag, input tag. And that is important because that format of the name is taken apart inside Rails to create the parameters for the action. If you get those wrong, the parameters hash may not be what you expect it to be, and you may have problems getting that to automatically flow into your model. So if you work with JavaScript or somehow include HTML in your views directly, you have to be sure that anything that's an input that's going to be sent back up to the server has its name set in the proper way so that the controller knows how to take it apart. Okay, so now let me go over here and fill in some random data, and we can submit this and see what happens. So I'm going to click the submit button, and now we're going to go back into RubyMine because it hit the breakpoint. It has stopped right here. It has set up an instant variable called example magic, which is a new model instance with the params that were sent in. So now let's take a look down in the development log again, and we can see that we've got a post request that went to the create controller. Now that's all controlled by the routing, which is outside the scope of this particular talk. And here you can see the CSRF token that came up, and you can see the example magic hash, which contains the keys for the various attributes and their values that were entered. It would be better if I could spell random, but I guess that's a random spelling. So this is the format that's expected, and that can be used here to create the initial values in this new model. So let's look at the variables as seen in the RubyMine IDE. So you can see in the params that has all the values we were expecting. In example magic, there they are. And then you can see, if we look at the instance variable that contains that model, and we look at the attributes, the values I sent up are in there. ID, created at, and updated at are nil because this has not yet been saved. So I'm going to continue running this, and now it has saved that, and we'll go over and look at the browser again, and you'll see this, that's for the URL for the show action, and there's all the data, so we can see that it actually did get the data that we were expecting, and we can see that we have a message up here which is out of the flash. It came from the previous, was set in the previous request, the create request, and is now displayed here. Now let's go back and look at what's going on over here in the development log. And I can scroll back a bit, and you can see here that I start off by inserting into example magics all those values. So it's saving it in the database. Now when we run the show action, you can see that that's the show action. It's selecting and pulling that data out of the database. It's creating the template as before and sending it down. This time it took 85.9 milliseconds. The difference is probably in the database access. And now it's going to send down all the CSS and JavaScript again. In a production environment, you can set things up so that CSS and JavaScript is cached in the browser if the browser does that. And then you don't have to send this down over and over again using bandwidth. In development, you really don't want it to work that way, because if what you change was something about JavaScript or something about CSS, you want that to show up on the page in the browser rather than requiring you to restart the browser to clear the cache, or do something to clear the cache. Now, if we look at the browser, there it all is. So I hope this helped. Good luck with your adventures in Rails.